Taking a trip to the Barossa Valley to conduct research for this series isn't a tough ask. In fact, some might say that I've been willing to make this trip from Adelaide to Australia's premier wine destination on my own accord in the past. The Barossa Valley, and indeed the riverland that encompasses the BARLE group, are iconic production regions for wine and other fruit. A trip to South Australia really isn't complete without a visit to the area. I spent an afternoon walking through a town once called Gnadenfrei, past St Michael's Lutheran Church and to Marananga School, which, now gentrified, houses a fine restaurant, pottery studio and cellar door. The space has evolved and been revitalised, but the nods to its history are ever present. Across the region, I've been long aware of the term terroir, a French word used to describe the interplay between an increasingly long list of factors, such as climate, soil, terrain, and tradition, that impact the characteristics of a crop. Speaking to the winemakers of this region, it is abundantly clear that almost all of the great characteristics of a fine wine come from the richness and the care of the soil and environment from which it grows. In wine, the result in the glass comes from the grace and care given to the conditions where grapes grow. For our BARLE principles, the result in the class is from the grace and care given to their well-being. This episode of Batelando was recorded and produced on the lands of the Ghana and Ngari people. On my visit, I was fortunate enough to meet Darren Altus.
My name's Darren Altus.
Darren joined the BARLE group 2 years ago when he became the principal at Good Shepherd Lutheran School in Angaston.
I guess as soon as I came as part of a regular part of the group, I instantly felt like I belonged and that I was part of the group and there was no hierarchical system or anything like that. People saw me for who I was and welcomed me immediately.
And so who is Darren Altus?
That's a really good question. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm a teacher. I'm a Lutheran. I'm someone who makes mistakes. I'm someone who has ideas, some good ideas, some bad ideas, but they just see me for, who I am.
And this is what this episode is all about. The way in which this group of exceptional educational leaders from Lutheran schools across the Barossa and Riverland reclaimed their identity as a network. This is a story of vulnerability, of well-being, and of retreat.
I think the importance of the lunch thing, I reckon, was quite strategic, whether it was knowing or unknowing. But what it did was, it said that as first of all, we're people. You said before about being transactional, functional. But I think when you sit down at the table and you can share a little bit deeper, and you actually don't talk about work stuff and school stuff, you talk about personal things. Then there's a greater shared vulnerability. And I think maybe another thing that changed too in recent years was the devotional part of it became less transactional, became definitely more vulnerable. Goodness gracious, some of the devotions in the last 5 years, there've been people in tears and like very heartfelt sharings, and not nearly always personal stories, not just out of a book, in the last 4 or 5 years. And I think that's contributed a lot. So I think those things have played in together. I think one of Lloyd's great strengths has been that he is a person first, and sees people as people first, and not, a means to an end, which is not necessarily how everybody always sees it.
The day that I joined the BARLE group for their network day, I was a part of this devotional culture that Daryl Trigg explains firsthand. I was fortunate enough to hear from Tamara.
Hi, I'm Tamara Zilm.
Tamra shared about the origin story of Open Arms, the centre that she leads, and how it got its name.
I guess partly because I have joined the BARLE group. I was originally, Open Arms sits right on the border of two of our Lutheran hubs. And I actually joined the BARLE group after trying to work out where we fit. We're kind of relative newcomers in the whole scheme of Lutheran education in the state. And so while I've come along, a lot of people don't necessarily understand where we came from as a centre and how we formed. And because we're a long daycare centre, we're a little bit different to the schools. We also sit on a site that we don't own, so we're a bit different in that avenue. So I chose to share our journey just so my colleagues could get a better picture of exactly how it is that Open Arms came to be, and to get a picture of how we fit and how we're similar and how we're different.
The devotion, though, was etched with Tamra's experience, her challenges, and her identity.
Also, I don't think at any point we can separate as much as we'd like to think. We can never really separate what we bring professionally and our personal history. I think always flavours the way we come to a role. And so by sharing a little bit about me, it helps my colleagues understand a little bit about why I might do the things that I do and what flavours it are, what flavours my thoughts and thinking. Working in childcare, we very much look at the culture of a family, and we are still in a very white Anglo-Saxon area. But we've come to appreciate that every family experience and everything, part of your journey flavours the way that you think, and the biases that you might bring to your role, positive or negative. And I think sharing that just sort of helps my colleagues maybe understand the way I view things and why I've had the passions and challenges that I have along the way.
But how did Tamra know to be open as a new member of this group? What is etched on the walls of this group that send that signal that vulnerability was to be respected, cared for, and celebrated?
I think because ultimately, there's a few parts. Number one, when I came to this group, there was an obvious sharing and vulnerability. So it was a forum that I felt that I could be open about the journey and give a little bit of my own background.
And there's that word, vulnerability. In today's episode, we're going to hold two words lightly. The first, vulnerable.
A shared vulnerability.
That
Vulnerability.
we were vulnerable with each other.
And the second is retreat.
Even though it's only a day, it does feel in a way like a mini retreat.
The reason we're holding these words lightly is because when we hear vulnerability, we can hear weakness, fragility, likeliness to fail. But with this group, when they hear strength, anti-fragility, and a platform for thriving. When we hear retreat, we're not saying run away, but rather step back. Gather your strength, gather your resources, and embrace the challenges again.
There's a key element in all of this, and it's that we were vulnerable with each other. And I don't think that happens every other time. We started, and Michelle was one of our leaders, and was very vulnerable about her story and how her life had changed. And during the spiritual input of all of the people that followed, they were vulnerable. The people never abused that vulnerability, and I think it grew a cohesion and a sense of purpose that we never imagined. And we three facilitators would often go, wow.
And so did I. The gentle voice you hear is that of Lloyd Fife, who crafted these retreats, this vulnerability, through his leadership. The legacy of meaningful devotion is enmeshed within the fabric of this group.
And I think it was a little bit more too around the devotions for me. spoke to who these people are as leaders and why they lead the way they do. And they brought vulnerability to that conversation. They talked about their strengths. They talked about what they needed to do next. And it was all within that network of honesty and collaboration and sharing. So, we talk about you need to understand yourself before you can lead others. This was a really terrific way of undertaking a process of self-reflection and then bringing it to the table.
Mary Hudson, one of the facilitators brought in to support the BARLE Hub, has been championing that self-reflection and personal well-being as the basis for successful leadership. Something I so often hear when working with leaders is how hard it is to just take a day away from your school. In working with this group, it is so clear that their time together has reached that retreat level experience, where that line, "I can't afford a day away from my school," is no longer part of the lingua franca.
You can't not walk away without feeling a little bit of a spring in your step when you leave these meetings. Like, I nearly wasn't going to come today. I've really had just a challenging couple of weeks, and particularly the last couple of days. And I'm like, I cannot afford another day, out, and I need to stay at school today. And then I woke up and I went, you know what? I actually can't afford not to go. From my own well-being.
Patria Booth speaks of a retreat in that way. She was having a tough time and questioned taking a day away from St. Jacobi Lutheran School in Lyndoch, but realised you really can't afford not to.
Just fills your bucket again, and I feel like I will turn up at school tomorrow with another, just a bit more energy and ready to take on the rest of the week and hopefully the rest of the term and survive. But yeah, I think, you met someone, it might have been you, that mentioned about a retreat. This is like, even though it's only a day, it does feel in a way like a mini retreat. And I missed one when I was over in Europe. I wasn't going to come back for that one. But I think, I haven't missed one yet. And I think that probably speaks volumes about the importance of it for me personally, and how it re-energizes me and, fills my bucket to keep going. So
A very, very long drive away, at Wakery Lutheran Primary School, we can find Jeffrey Strauss, who leads a small community where it really is very hard to get away.
As a principal, you don't go to too many things where you actually, unless you seek out your own professional development, which I haven't, purely because the school needs me. I need to be in the school. So the BARLE group is a day out where I get to refresh my energy for what we do.
I've been careful thus far not to say that someone is taking a day away from their role as principal, because to these principals, leaving the physical side of their school for a BARLE day is a treasured part of actually doing the job, which Jeffrey loves.
I do. I actually look forward to this because it's my other outlet of a job where I can't believe that I get to go to a wonderful gathering as part of my role. I'm expected to be here. I'm very fortunate to be here.
But where does all this come from? If it was as simple as a devotion, a personal connection, or telling people to be vulnerable, then every network across Australia would be thriving.
I think he asked for a commitment of, if we all see this as important, then we'll commit to coming. And I remember us all making that formal commitment of, we're all coming, but also we're all staying for lunch. That was the big thing. I think before then there was a thing of, I might be too busy to come if I didn't like the agenda item. But I think when Lloyd came, it really was, do we see this as important? Because we went back to, what are we here for? And we all made that commitment of, we all are going to be here every time if we can be, and we're all staying for lunch because that was important. That was important to be there as well.
Michelle Keller from Faith Lutheran School in Tanunda identified a shared meal and the purposeful leadership of Lloyd Fife as a key part of facilitating that vulnerability. But it's really easy to tell someone to be vulnerable. It's easy just to tell them to trust you. So how did Lloyd, as an external voice, navigate this?
Trying to have everybody heard and for everyone to be, to come to the space and to actually contribute to it. So if there was an opportunity to affirm someone in sharing, then that was done. And I think in the sharing, others were respectfully listening and feeding in. And I think people grew from that. It's a very simple thing. It's not dissimilar to a classroom. But I think that's what we did.
My add-on to that would be, so that's the spiritual part was really important. Really important. So that devotion which you're talking about, I think the fact that different people led those and that it was intense at times was something that really brought the group together.
Chris Prance is one of the 2 external facilitators who have guided this group and who have been moved by the culture of vulnerability and sense of retreat that the BARLE Hub has developed. Mary Hudson, who facilitates with Chris, identifies that this culture was one that the group wanted.
The group had to be co-constructors of what the group was actually about, and also, I suppose, self-directing collaborators. And I guess the purpose was, the ultimate purpose through that process of co-design was that the BARLE group was to become a collaborative network of support through the lens of wellbeing.
The BARLE group wanted to be more than they were. And through the leadership of themselves, first and foremost, as well as that provided by Lloyd, Chris, and Mary, they've been able to do it. From Daryl and Michelle, who have been a part of this group the longest, through to their newest members like Darren and Tamara, it's clear that being a part of BARLE means giving more than just your time. More than that, actually. You give a piece of yourself to be better together.
I think you just naturally picked it up through the culture that was part of the group. You could tell that it was grounded in vulnerability, people telling their story, and people sharing who they were and what was important to them. But there was clear, I guess, leadership and direction as well, and Lloyd Fife was a key player in that. But so too were some of the more experienced principals who would gently share, and not necessarily intentionally, but just implicitly through conversations and through agendas and through the work that we did together.
Vulnerability, anti-fragility, that sense that challenges make you stronger, more prepared for what's next. Maybe what's unique about this network is that they are formed deliberately to be vulnerable, to look for challenges to embrace, and that they trust each other to be the support and the resources that they need for what lies ahead.
Yeah, but we certainly had some challenges along the way. Organisational ones, just probably looking at the same thing but seeing different things. I remember having some meetings back in the very early days where it was articulated, this is a day out of the school. This is sort of a rest day. And in some ways, it is a rest day, and it continued to be a rest day even in the later few years, because it was a day where you could feel safe.
The BARLE network is built on the strongest foundation that I can imagine: vulnerability. The terroir is palpable in the way that they work. They share deeply, but not because they're told to, but because every time that they have, they've been affirmed and supported. Every member makes it clear that that is what we do around here. I could pick it up within minutes of joining their time together. This group decided, collectively, to reform themselves in this new image, and through the guidance that is often called wisdom of Lloyd, they really are there. The fabric of the BARLE group is sharing deeply and being gracious supports that is required for those around them. What I have now labelled a retreat was co-designed by the group and the facilitators. It's etched into every agenda, and it feels like no level of busy, no crisis, no challenge will see it scrubbed out. It's because of that the principles of the BARLE group don't miss this day. My name is Michael Murphy, and today you've heard from the principals of the Barossa and Region's Lutheran Education Hub. Thank you to the Lutheran Education South Australia, Northern Territory and Western Australia for supporting this episode. To find out more about them, visit lesnw.edu.au. In our next episode with the BARLE group, we pack our bags and look up and out. And we explore how they took what they call day hikes to embrace some of education's biggest challenges.